very special guest. Her name's Richa Bansal. She's from a very small town of Dehradun. I think I need to do a Dehradun special on my podcast because I have so many people from Dehradun now. Uh,
Something about that soon.
Absolutely, so many people. So she's from Dehradun. If I tried to find a little bit about her on the social space, I did not get much. And I'm going to ask Richa why she doesn't speak about herself, why women don't speak about themselves, about their themselves more than their work, because I can only see her work here. So she is the founder for a company called Saarathee, a beautiful social impact company which currently runs a customer contact center. They champion inclusion of persons with disabilities. It's a very, 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 what should I say, powerful medium of giving space to people who we feel are, specially abled or like lesser able than us, but how powerful that you are making them. And I think we will talk more about their abilities, which are even better than us. And of course, we will dwell more into who Richa is in this podcast. So let's just dive in. Richa, welcome. How are you feeling today?
I'm feeling absolutely great. And when you say that we are going to put the spotlight on Richa, it seems very strange, because every time we think of writing something on social media, you're either talking about what you do, you either talk about your family, you either talk about something that has happened in life. But you're so right. We've consciously, and at least I can talk for myself, I've never consciously even thought about who I am and should I be even talking about who I am. So yeah, I think that's an area which perhaps has never been spoken about and never thought that that is important either. Our growing up, when we put too much attention on ourselves, I think we are made to believe that you're so self-centered. You can only think about yourself, and that is something which has happened particularly with me in my life once. And I think consciously so, my path changed post that. So when I was growing up, I remember that I was, and I continue to be, the center of my parents' life. And I was given extreme amount of freedom to do a lot of things. So whether it was learning to drive a car at a very, very early age, being given the freedom to have my way in terms of picking and choosing things that I wanted to do, and I was being allowed to do that. Being the first child to step out of Dehradun and study, stay alone in an accommodation all by myself and work. So I think I made life all about myself when I was growing up. But something changed after perhaps I got married in the year 2004, because I continued to live my life like that exactly, because I made everything about myself. But I think that was not the way it was as an accepted norm. And I was made to believe that I was extremely self-centered. I was extremely selfish. And that kind of became such a powerful and strong emotion, a strong thought in my mind, that I had to really work hard at letting go of that. First of all, I was made to feel guilty about it. And I'm sure a lot of women also feel guilty about indulging in being able to showcase what they are. So that happened with me. So I had to completely redo myself. I had to suddenly change the focus away from who I was to everything that I was beginning to do. And maybe that was also perhaps the reason, Archana, when I started my journey on the social impact side, because I suddenly thought that maybe because I'm so self-consumed, maybe I'm so self-centered, I'm not giving enough. And that is when my journey of giving started, you know.
Wow.
And yeah, so this is what has happened in my life.
What a perspective. I mean, really. And, when we talk to so many of us in the same fraternity now, somewhere where it's all starting comes from is it really appalls me. It really shakes me to say, oh my goodness, where does it start? How are we made to feel? And then maybe, it's seen as retaliation, or like, taking care of ourselves is not seen as normal, so it's really a very hard-hitting story for everyone. So now
Correct.
that you
And thank you for asking me that question, Archana. Why I say that is because sometimes when the right question is asked, you are also pushed to reflect. And
yeah.
perhaps today, perhaps is the first time when I can connect the dots. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I think, yeah, you need to ask yourself some questions, and then the answers will come to say, hey, yeah, I never thought of it, but how did it all begin?
Correct, correct, correct.
But now that you have a 6-year-old daughter,
Yeah.
6.5-year-old daughter, how have you seen the change or the transition about, the way that you're bringing her up? And what kind of a lady you think that she will be differently than you?
So she's quite the contrary personality from me. So I'm a very impatient person. I want everything jaldi, 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 jaldi. She, on the other hand, is one person who's brought in a certain level of wo bolte hain na, sthirta.
Hmm.
She's brought that in me. Um, she is the one who encourages me. She's the one who's extremely proud of me.
Wow.
And there are certain things that she has started following in my footsteps. She's a very sensitive child. She's a very giving soul. And she acknowledges uh, a lot of things which are happening around her. At a very early age, uh, she realized that her ecosystem is not just me and Papa, but everyone around. So her giving is not just about the physical things or material things that she gives away, but the love. She is the most loving soul that I have come across. So I always say she's my soul connection.
Wow.
So yeah, so she is my soul connection. And also I think there is a marked difference between how we were growing up and how our children are growing up in today's day and age. They are so um, um, intelligent, inquisitive, as well as sensitive at the same time. So I'm amazed at how they bring in a complete set of energy as well as a huge amount of patience at the same time. And they're so sorted. Already at 6, I see her very, very sorted in what she wants to be. I don't know whether she will end up being that at all or not, but at least I don't think we were even initiating those conversations at our times. So yeah, I think she gives me a huge amount of confidence in who I am. Yeah.
But I think they also are pretty blessed to have a set of parents like we are for them, because definitely we missed out on a lot of, what should I say, also support, guidance in a way that, they were open to a lot of things. It was still a very primitive, orthodox way of like
Correct.
bringing, of like saying girls do this, boys do this.
Correct.
Still independent, of course. Like you said, you learned driving at a young age. I learned driving at 14 as well, and I was
Yeah. Yeah.
given a lot of platform to say, hey, here, the world is yours. But still, there were restrictions as a girl. I had to come back by 7 o'clock. I remember if I didn't, then my dad would like literally, like, not even open the door. So there were
Hmm.
things which were, like controlled.
Yeah.
But
Correct. Correct.
we can't even control these kids, by the way. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
So let me go back to the Richa that was, to the Richa that is. So tell me, where did you start your journey? After college, what did you do in college? What did you do after that? How did you land up where what you're doing right now?
So I, like a regular Dehradun, girl. I think the biggest aspiration we all used to have at that time was schooling यहाँ से होगी, graduation के लिए या तो चंडीगढ़ चले जाते हैं या दिल्ली. So I think that was the only aspiration we had, and luckily so I came to Delhi for my graduation, and I did my BCom honors from Indraprasth College, and post that I, like in the 90s as things used to be, appeared for my cat, and I couldn't crack cat. So I actually, because of whatever circumstances, I fainted in my exam and
Oh,
I lost my precious 10 minutes. Yeah. So actually, if I rewind back a little, Archana, I think I started facing setbacks very early on in life. And I think those setbacks for me also made me that much more stronger.
So, Richa, this podcast is about second act, and second act, has been very different for different people. Very powerful word, I think. Every morning when I wake up, I ask myself, "So, what's my second act today?" So it just helps me to focus better on the task that I want to do, because there's always something, a meaning that I find in my day to do. It could be different
Yeah.
for you, but because I really want everybody who's hearing us, seeing us today, I want Richa to tell us, what is your second act?
So I think, Archana, I am living my second act actually, because in my life, there are multiple things that have happened, done and dusted, and then the second act started. Uh, Similar thing happened with me at work. So I think till the time that I was in my early 30s, my only wish and ambition in life was मुझे CEO बनना है. किस कंपनी का, जिस कंपनी में मैं काम कर रही हूँ. बिकॉज हम लोगों को ऐसे सिखाया जाता है, हम हॉर्स की तरह सिर्फ एक ही राह पे चलते रहते हैं, अप्रेजल साइकिल टू अप्रेजल साइकिल, दैट्स ऑल दैट यू वांट टू विश फॉर. किसी तरीके से आपकी रेटिंग आउटस्टैंडिंग आ जाए, योर फाइल शुड बी ऑल ग्लोरियस विद द बेस्ट रेटिंग्स एवर. You get nominated for some workshop or the other, and you are like the person when it comes to the CEO who's watching out, who's the spark there. And I think that also changed for me. That changed in the year 2010, when my first exposure to CSR happened. So that was the time when I was working with Vodafone. So I spent about 8.5 years in Vodafone. I did my sales, marketing, brand, distribution, everything there. So I actually call it my foundation of professional life that I actually spent there, and much that I owe to that company. And that was the place where suddenly, the entire CSR initiatives were being launched. And as I had mentioned earlier, uh, I guess that concept of giving was so strong at that time that I said, okay, this is my chance. Let me see what I can do. And I think it just opened up a huge door for me, and where I saw such immense possibilities, and it brought such beautiful joy to me. I suddenly felt, why was I not doing something like this earlier? And it started with basic few hours of volunteering. And then there was Vodafone Foundation that came in India. And Vodafone Foundation at that time was struggling with a project coordinator. They wanted to do a women empowerment project, which meant talking about some 13 empowered women from across the country, and we needed to meet with them, capture their stories, etc. And I volunteered. I said, I want to be the project coordinator. And it was a 3-month stint that I did there with them. And that was truly the final nail, in my corporate life. And that changed my life completely, because suddenly I felt like here I am, a woman who is well educated, has earned decent amount of money, comes from a good background, and I am struggling, or I am living a life where I only need to think of how many prepaid sales will happen the next day. I mean, that is not something that I want to live my life with, because I suddenly saw women who were making a difference. A girl who perhaps was championing the cause of stopping child marriages. There was another woman who was trying to drive digitization in her village. So it suddenly, I had like, oh my God. And I felt small. I really felt small at that time. But then I came back with a lot of hope. And that hope took close to about 7 to 8 months to translate into action for me. I gathered my enough courage to quit Vodafone. And that was also the time I got married to Arjun. And he gave me a huge amount of encouragement, as well as hope that it's all right. It doesn't matter. You just take a break and see what you want to do. And that is when Child Rights in You happened to me. So it was a very massive move for me, from a hardcore corporate job to a social sector, and I had no clue what I would do. The only thing I knew was मुझे बेचना आता था, मुझे marketing करनी आती थी. So I went there for the interview, and honestly, 7 rounds of interview, Archana. I had never gone through so many interviews, even for a corporate job. And I was wondering, and imagine, look at how I think. Okay, at that time, the first thought I was like, you should feel obligated, a corporate person and coming and joining you. But suddenly, all of that vanished. They really brought me down to the ground. The kind of humility that I learned working in CRI, I don't think it existed with me before that. So 3 years in Child Rights in You transformed me completely. And then I think there was no looking back. I took a sabbatical when Adya happened. And when I had to get back to work, no questions asked. It couldn't have been a corporate job. However, I also equally didn't want it to be a job with an NGO because, in all fairness, NGOs have brilliant intentions. They have their heart in the right place. But somehow the pace did not suit me. And as I mentioned a little while ago, I'm a very, I have to constantly keep doing things. So it didn't suit my pace. So I said, okay, let's see what we could do. And I was not ready to kind of hang my boots and say that, okay, I'm not going to earn, I'm only going to do social work. So I wanted a beautiful marriage between the value that I could create in terms of social impact and equally the business value that I could generate for the community as well as for myself. And that is when Saarathee happened. Yeah. So
And
this is my second.
Yeah, second act at work.
Yeah,
So thank
that's
you
my
for giving such a beautiful perspective on both your second acts. But I also hear you that you're also as ambitious as you were. So nothing changed in that.
I'm absolutely ambitious. And I'll tell you the other thing that has happened is while my ambition continues to be, one, I think I was fairly open in my conversation with my husband about it. Arjun and I had an open conversation about it. And he equally was honest with me in saying that I would rather encourage your ambitions, but I would equally want to say that I would take a little easy and I would take a back step because two people who are running after something that they want to do, both people ambitious will not work. So he said, let me just support your ambitions. And I'm truly grateful for him on this one. And that's how it happened. And second, I think I equally learned the art of being slightly more giving to the relationship. I think I was more understanding, I was more giving. And of course, he will be the one to validate that. So I can't really say that. But yeah, I think open conversations really help. And I would encourage everybody, especially when it comes to marriage, we shy away from having conversations. I learned one thing from Arjun: encourage open conversations. So that has helped.
Yeah, I think that's very important. And I think even I have learned this over time during a marriage that before, I think, few years, you're only dealing with situations, dealing with adaptability, dealing with trying to make it work and, like, create an atmosphere which is okay for both to exist. But I think as we, like, pull along a few years, you feel, okay, you're just not making things work. You have to feel better about this relationship, about each other, and making the next 20, 30, 40 years that you're spending together more beautiful than it is. And that
Yes,
only
absolutely.
conversations can help. So I think even if you're not agreeing with things and you're fighting about it, or showing like your discontentment about it, but at least you're talking and at least you're expressing.
Expressing yourself.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
think that makes it happen. So tell me, small town girl, first marriage from your sweetheart. I mean, you married somebody that whom you love, not an arranged one. Also, when it fell apart, did you come across the stigma, or like your parents, yeah, or relatives or peers, or like, is there anything that you felt? Because still Dehradun is Dehradun. It's not really one of the metro cities where still things are more open.
Archana, each time I've been asked the question that what are the challenges you faced as a woman?
Hmm.
Okay. Uh, Honestly, I think it is purely based on our own belief system. If you feel that everybody is out there trying to make you feel guilty about something, trying to bring you down because you're a woman, you will start accepting and believing in it. Somehow, because of the kind of environment I grew up in, uh, never ever, uh, even till now, I have never felt any different just because I'm a woman.
Wow.
So even when I went through a separation, it didn't occur to me. मेरे को दिमाग में भी नहीं आया that there is going to be a social stigma. Never for a moment.
Wow.
And thankfully, that is also to do with the fact that my parents never made me feel like that. Never. So much so, they wanted to bring me back to Dehradun. But I equally knew that if I go back to Dehradun, I won't have anything else to do. So I stayed put in Delhi. I continued with my job exactly the same way as I used to. Nobody asked a question, nobody raised an eyebrow. And I think when you want to encourage conversations around it, they will get encouraged. If you don't want to talk about it, nobody will. And eventually, everybody knows. And I think when you expect maturity from people, people will show it to you. But if you don't expect maturity, they won't. And I think it's like what you give, what you expect, it comes back to you. So I have never faced that challenge in life.
That's not something that you hear every day, by the way. You know, it
Yeah,
is your social circle, your peer, your parents, relatives. It's a lot of pressure. Of course, things are changing, but things are changing, on a slow pace. And I would say at least the cities still see it, but still smaller towns. I'm very impressed. And kudos to your parents and, who may supported you and right agreed with everything that for your own happiness and growth. So that's
absolutely.
commendable. Yeah. So coming to now work. So, you said Sarathi happened, of course, also by default, not that you planned it. Okay. Because you were working in a corporate job. If you didn't get an exposure into a social sector, you did not have an idea what was happening on this side. So you think that chances in life bring us your second act as well?
Oh, yes. Uh, I think somewhere what our heart desires and is looking for, that also tries to reach out to us. So as much as we are seeking it, it's seeking us back. So and I always believe I'm a manifester of my dreams on every account. So it isn't that Sarathi just happened by chance. I always knew that it was something which was in the offing, but it was to come much later in my life. I never thought that it would be a profit-making organization. I always thought this was a model that was supposed to happen later in my life when I will retire. I won't have anything else to do. So I will do something which is to sustain livelihood for people. It
Mm-hmm.
just happened at the right timing. It just got advanced. Similarly, even Dehradun happened to me much earlier. It was supposed to be happening later. So these are all formations of
Sure.
what my life is going to be in future, and it just happened. Yeah.
Mm. So why Sarathi? Why disability? Why not anything else?
So I was exposed to the community when I was working with Vodafone. So this was in 2011, I think. That was the time when I started doing a project with persons with disabilities. I was leading I was leading the telemarketing channel for North India, for Delhi particularly. And that was the time when we were asked to drive this initiative where a tie-up happened with NAB Hoskas, and we were supposed to recruit some 20 people, train them on telecalling, and hire them. And it was a 6-month project. I had very little hopes. Being a salesperson, I was more concerned about my numbers. So I don't think I was extremely open minded about it. But nonetheless, we went ahead with the entire initiative. And in 6 months, Archana, it was an eye opener. It just gave me the confidence there is so much that they can do. Because I think prior to that, my only exposure to the blind was watching them on the roadside begging. In all honesty, that is the only impression I had. That initiative transformed my thought process. And furthermore, I continued to be in touch with Shalini, who was the National Association for the Blind Hoscast director. And when I took a sabbatical, I went back to her and I told her, I have a lot of time at hand. What should I do? She said, why don't you start visiting us? For 6 months, I continued to visit the center. That is when I closely experienced the blind. I closely experienced uh, not only the challenges, but also the kind of skill set they brought to the table. And I had already worked in the corporate sector. I knew what it took to be a salesperson. So, what I simply did was I married the skills that I brought to the table with something that persons with visual impairment brought, which was empathy and intuition. I just combined and made a sales proposition out of it. And that is what we started to offer to the clients. And we suddenly found that, they were receptive, they found value. And that's how Saarathee came about.
Wow. So I think this initiative, what you're doing, is not only bringing people with disabilities into a normal world, because that's what I think we completely feel our world is normal and their world isn't, and, very corporate. Uh,
Yeah.
and on the other hand, also making people who feel that we are in the normal world, showing another missing link, which we probably, like we said, we have so many biases, right? This person might not be able to do this person will not be able to function like me. But what you said, intuition, what you said, focus, what you said was something that they brought,
Empathy. Yeah.
which probably we are completely missing. There's so much to learn from them. I think it's a very fantastic initiative, and I'm glad that corporates are taking, like you got great response and they're responding to this. But at the same time, I'm sure that there is a lot of emotional, mental, psychological needs of, the way they are brought up and the way we treat them, to be honest, more than anybody else. You're dealing with a lot of those as well. How are you really handling those issues for them? Or maybe how are you learning from there? I mean, let's put it
One
there.
is learning, I think it's a huge amount of emotional investment for me personally. In my first year, it was very taxing emotionally for me because suddenly there were these barrage of emotions coming from different people that I wasn't used to dealing with.
Right.
Because, as you rightly said, we divide our world between normal and
The rest.
people with disabilities.
Yeah.
So it was a very, very new experience for me. So I think I had to work a lot on myself to be able to deal with people. So that was one part of it. And secondly, I think today we are working with about 100 people with disabilities. And it is surprising, but equally very satisfying that whatever you may expect a person with disability to come across as, they don't do so anymore. They come work as if they were any other employee in an organization. They understand the expectations exactly the same way as we would if we were to work in a corporate environment, and they deliver accordingly. So
Wow.
the kind of expectation setting is exactly the same as it would exist in any other situation. And just to reach to this stage has taken us a lot of effort and a lot of time. But now that we have, these 100 people have become advocates of the same for the next 100 who will join us.
Yes.
Because the expectation setting has been defined so beautifully.
Yes, so true. No, but at the same time, when you say that, there are people with disability who are working, what are the kinds of disabilities for us to know? I mean,
Yeah.
that'll be a,
So, So Archana, today I started working with persons with visual impairment only. So even today, out of the total strength of people we have, close to about 85% of those are persons with visual impairment,
yeah.
followed by, no, in fact, now a little less because we've just hired another batch of orthopedically challenged people. So we have close to about 80% who are blind. The remaining are about 15%. 80%, 15% would be orthopedically challenged, and 5% are hearing impaired.
Okay. And so what kind of jobs are they really doing? I know that you're doing something at the back end. You said sales, I could hear call center assistance. So, what all kinds of jobs are you training them for?
So we are not a training institute. We are a customer contact center. So we work like any other contact center that exists to support larger organizations. So like we are the outsourced service partner for Daikin air conditioners. We are also the outsourced service partner for ITC Foods.
Wow.
We support the customer service in both these processes. Equally, we are working with Amazon. For Amazon, we are helping the sellers to come on board. We list their products, so we support the e-commerce piece completely. Then we are also helping a lot of large B2B companies to fix up appointments. So there is appointment setting that we do. We do lead validation. We do IT support backend. So we do all kinds of work. The only thing is we have to map the job role to each and every disability that we hire. That is the only additional thing that we have to do before we make the hiring for the role.
So, does it slow down the process, you think, or it's the same functional process with anybody or any other kind of setup like this?
It is the same. The only difference is, Archana, that we have to look at the accessibilities. So, because everything is today happening digitally, the softwares have to be slightly, tuned into in terms of the accessibility for person with visual impairment. In terms of our speed to competency, if an average person as we say, the typical person would take roughly 5 days, an atypical person would take anywhere between 7 to 10 days. So that is the kind of difference. However, the clients that we bring on board are onboarded on all of this before we sign up with them, and they are absolutely okay with it.
So, what is your life learnings from people that you work with on everyday basis? I'm sure that you're learning so much from them.
Yeah.
So, what
Oh,
is?
yes. Yeah, absolutely. I think one, they're my biggest motivators. They inspire me every day. So, very recently on Women's Day, we published 3 remarkable and inspiring stories of women who work with Saarathee. And there are so many things that I also discover every day. And when I read those, it just made me feel so much more grounded, so much more, God has given us so much. Uh, the kind of struggle that they have gone through to be able to reach a stage which makes them feel happy and satisfied is very different. So yes, they inspire me, they motivate me, and they are the ones for I would give 100% credit for success of Saarathee, because if it wasn't their belief, if it wasn't for their commitment, I don't think Saarathee would have even reached where we have till now. And they have larger vision for Saarathee than even I could have imagined.
So powerful, so good. Yeah. So, one is that, of course, what you are learning. One is the other question I want to ask is what can we do better in understanding them, in giving them that space, in providing, our world to them? What can we do better?
I think we as human beings are made a certain way that even before the other person is about to say something, we've already figured out what our response is going to be.
Mm.
Uh, so similarly, when we see a person with disability, we've already created a huge perception in our mind. I think the first step is drop those perceptions. Number 2, make yourself a little more aware about that disability. And number 3, start behaving normally with them. They do not want any extra care, love, support, nothing. They want to be treated at par. The only extra thing you can possibly offer to them is, as I say, when it comes to persons with disabilities, it's not equal, it's equitable. You just have to raise, you just have to create the right kind of environment in which they can thrive, right? So, for example, if you want to include someone in your organization to work, it is not just saying in your advertisement, persons with visual impairment can walk in for an interview. Have you done enough in your organization to make the work environment conducive for him to work? That is the step. But that is still the third step. The first step is drop the perceptions, make yourself aware about the disability. And third, make them feel included from a society point of view, from a social point of view.
So this whole topic of inclusion and diversity, what do you have to say about that? Because from my, what I know is that, inclusion diversity has a lot of importance, or, the criteria created for women inclusion. There is also a lot of focus on LGBTQ. So there is still a large part of disabilities which is still left out. So what do you think that we can do better also in this space of inclusion diversity?
So to be very honest, Archana, in the last few months, particularly, I have come across very conscious corporates who have the right intention. And they have set targets, they want to do the right thing. Unfortunately, there are very few people who are able to operationalize it. I hear a lot of conversations. I mean, you look at LinkedIn pages, it's full of conversations around diversity, around inclusion. Eventually, what matters is what is the end result you've been able to achieve.
Right.
And one of the impediments to that is that not very many people know how to operationalize it. And जब वो आप operationalize नहीं कर पाते, क्योंकि disability के साथ सबसे बड़ा disadvantage is that it involves some amount of rejig in your organization to be able to accept them, right? When you talk about women, when you talk about LGBTQ, it is just your mental framework that has to change to be able to accept them. But when it comes to persons with disability, it is not only that, but also some other aspects of your functionalities that have to change, right? And that when corporates feel that, oh, this is too much of maramari, they wash their hands off it and they focus on easier ones. Even within persons with disability inclusion, what we have realized is that the most inclusion takes place for persons with orthopedic challenges, because there the mental faculties, or the vision capacity is existing. You can hear, you can talk, you can see. It is just the mobility, it is just the accessibility from a wheelchair and various other things that you have to take care of, and those are easier things, right? So I would encourage people to first start understanding the disability and see so much more that can happen.
So I hear you when you say that, they don't have the operations in place, or they don't have the processes in place, but the intention is right. So when my intention is right, obviously I want to do things, but I don't know how can I get there? So if somebody really wants to do this, what should he actually do? What should that organization do? I want to hire, I want to have a real inclusion in my corporate world, but how do I start?
Yeah. So we realized this very recently, Archana, because while there are corporates who are working with us, they also expressed the desire to start this entire inclusion journey within their organization. And that is when we have recently launched an inclusion practice, where apart from the contact center that functions independently, we are also out there supporting corporates in driving the entire operations. How to operationalize the entire inclusion is what we are supporting them on.
Amen.
So I would be happy to be reached out to if there is anyone who wants to operationalize inclusion for persons with disabilities.
Very nice. So we also do something like, run a concept called Pink Toilets on Ground, which are toilet spaces in the communities. Of course, we want, as a next step, these are inclusive spaces that we have created for women and children. And of course, in the next phase, we will also like to make them handicap friendly, disability friendly, LGBTQ friendly. So, of course, I'm leaning out to you to get more advice on how we should do this as a first step, because the intent is right. And like I said, How to make the next step is something that I think it'll be great. Like organizations such as yours, not only
Yeah.
that you work in this space of only creating jobs and creating spaces for creating an equitable world, like you said, but also advising on the process, because I think that's a very big step, the first step to
Yes.
actually make the change.
And also, I think, Archana, there is only that much that we would be able to make as a difference by hiring persons with disabilities. The moment we start impacting or helping larger corporates, the numbers will change drastically. Then we can genuinely start looking at a larger impact number.
Yeah, that's true. So great. This is a great conversation on the work that you're doing. And I want to talk more about women that you are. So, and the woman in the corporate or the entrepreneur world, you have experienced both. So,
Yeah.
how has that journey been? Do you think being a woman helps, or is it different than being a man, or is it the same for you? How did you feel in this progression, in the doing both the things together? Um, and
I
your
think it was not about, as I mentioned a little while ago, uh, I never felt the pinch or the disadvantage because I was a woman. I never somehow felt that. However, I think uh, I have grown drastically in the last few years. The person that I was till such time that I was working in a corporate was very different from who I am today. I think working in a corporate makes you that much more cutthroat. Working in a corporate makes you that much more alone, that much more self-centered. I think ever since I have moved out of that role, I suddenly realize I have so many more people in my life, and that is truly me. I am the person who attracts people in my life. And I realized till such time I was working in a corporate, nothing like that existed. I think I was people repeller. And today, that has changed for me. So let me tell you a little secret. So Arjun used to work with me at Vodafone when we both were respectively married. And today, if you were to ask that, if you were asked to get married to Richa at that time, he would say not at all, because I was genuinely a people repeller. He used to hate me at that time. And he says, you are a changed person today. So people can't recognize me that I'm the same human being. So I think with life's experiences, we just change so much that sometimes when you look back, you can't recognize the person you've left behind. And I'm happy to be who I am today. Yeah.
Very nice. And I know that we must talk about Be You Bravely. That's a community that we are forming together. A lot of like minded women have come in.
Yeah.
So, Be You Bravely is that space which we are trying to create to just be, being our authentic self, just trying to help each other in a way that we support each other emotionally, mentally, also psychologically in some ways. And that aligns with what you said, that you have opened your world. We have met so many people, but you really feel that a community like this is required in today's world. And why did you really think of joining?
I think there are very few spaces. So you started your conversation by saying that you looked through my social media and you couldn't find anything which was talking about who I am. And unfortunately, Archana, in today's day and age, or the way we have filled our lives up with so many things, there are very rare chances you get to be able to express who you are or to be who you are. You are constantly playing different roles at different points in time during the day.
So true.
And I truly feel there is a requirement for a space which just encourages you to be who you are, because sometimes we forget who we are. So from that point, I really felt that this is the place I want to be. I really want to be me. And that's what my motivation was.
Lovely. We have a rapid fire before you go. So, yeah. So tell me the best holiday for Richard would be.
Italy. I loved Italy. I've been there twice and I can go there again alone.
alone. That is the thing I was coming to.
That is the caveat.
Yeah, okay. So if Richa would not be doing Saarathi right now, what else could she be doing?
What else would I be doing? That's a difficult one. I think I would just be doing something with women. I would be in a village and I will mobilize women community there and figure out what I want to do with them. I would just empower women. That
Wow,
would be what I would do. Yeah.
beautiful. And that work has started with BU Bravely anyway, not with
Yes.
the village though, but we are very
You're a village in itself. Yeah.
yeah, that's different. Okay, so if I would turn your life back to 20 years, what is the different thing that you might do?
I would be less conscious of who I was. I think. I think I am who I am today, but I was so conscious. I was constantly looking for validation, how I looked, how I dressed, who my boyfriend is and who is not. So I think I wasted so much of my energy and time at that time. I would love to change that. I would be so much more confident as an adult. Yeah.
Okay. You're grateful for?
I'm grateful for life and its experiences. Yeah.
One regret?
None, actually. I think everything in my life has been a beautiful learning and an experience. So I don't regret even one thing in my life.
One thing, person, book, quote that probably you fall back on when you're low?
जो होता है अच्छे के लिए होता है. I think that is something which is my go-to. And so even if I wake up feeling absolutely low, so my mother-in-law always says, and she's the most chirpiest woman. So one phone call to her or to my mother. I think, something about women. And when it comes to mothers, they just have it in them. So they just know what to say to their daughters at the right time. And so my mother-in-law always says, "Jo hota hai, achhe ke liye hota hai." And my mother would be like, "It's okay. Sab theek ho jayega." So I think that is life. And that is exactly what I will tell my daughter. Sab theek ho jayega.
Great. So one sign off before you go.
I think women truly need to understand their potential. We sometimes undermine ourselves and we sometimes think that who we are is what others make us believe who we are. It's time for us to truly understand who we are through our own eyes. And that truly will make a lot of difference.
I think it's been a very, very heartfelt conversation. Thanks for also sharing all your second acts here, personal, professional, what you believe in, what you stand for, your values. Also being a manifester, which is, I think, so important that unless we manifest positivity, we will not get it.
Absolutely.
It's really a pleasure to have you, Richa. And yeah, look forward to learning more from you, learning more from the work that you're doing. Also, in your space, it's really powerful and beautiful. So thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.